Florence, April 26th, 1478. It's Easter week, and 10,000 people pack Florence Cathedral for High Mass. But there's an odd tension in the air. At the front of the crowd are the richest men in the city, the head of its most prominent bank and the shadow rulers of Florence, the brothers Medici. Lorenzo, the brains of the family, dark and cunning, is a poet and arts patron, while his younger brother, Giuliano, is the face, handsome, blonde, and charismatic, a winner of tournaments and a lover of women. Neither are yet 30, and they are surrounded by those they think friends. But what they don't know is that in the streets, groups of mercenaries and killers, one contingent led by an archbishop, gather to overthrow the Medici rule. And they have not only the backing of a rival banking clan, but the clandestine blessing of the Pope. But inside, the priest holds up the communion hosts, and the brothers kneel. That's when the friends behind them draw blades and prepare to bring the golden youth of the Medici to a bloody end. Don't forget, you can see part 2 of this series 1 week early ad-free right now over on Nebula. And since it's the holidays, you can snag a gift card so your friends can too. The tale of this series is a true crime story if I've ever heard one. The most shocking tale of deceit and bloodshed to ever rock Renaissance Italy, a time and place famous for violent plots. And it's also a story that Rob has been wanting to tell ever since he read it in an encyclopedia as a teenager, and you add those two things together and I am just pumped for this one. But a quick reminder, like any political conspiracy, it's also a complex web of players and interests. So please, keep your eyes and ears sharp on the setup this week, because once the stabbing begins, it will not stop. But right now, it's the carnival of 1475, and that future day of blood in the cathedral seems remote. For today is a day of entertainment and games, financially backed by Lorenzo as part of the Medici family's method of maintaining popularity. He serves as master of ceremonies, displaying public artworks and writing poems for the occasion, showcasing his intellectual might. Whereas in the tournament, Giuliano triumphs in the joust, entering under a banner painted by the artist Botticelli. The banner displays the face of the most beautiful woman in Florence, who Giuliano dedicates his victory to in an act of chivalrous courtly love. It is a perfect day, where these brothers, still in their 20s, are at the height of their youth, power, and innocence. And yet, there are those, even in Lorenzo's viewing box, who are plotting the brothers' fall, for the Medici have not always ruled Florence. See, long ago, Lorenzo's grandfather had established the Medici Bank, building an empire from account books, fund transfers, and loans. The Medici offered credit to kings and merchants, but their greatest business was as personal bankers to the papacy. With the Medici Bank, you could deposit funds in London, get a letter of credit, then withdraw funds in Florence, minus a small fee, of course. And they'd converted this influence into political power. Though Florentines were proud of being a republic, one where families were randomly selected to run the government for 6 months, the Medici held the real power. With their wealth, position, and marriage alliances, they called in favors and installed friendly bureaucrats. During the reign of Lorenzo's father, Piero the Gouty, the government of Florence moved within the walls of the Medici palace. Piero was not a well man, you see, and effectively ran the republic from his bedchamber. Yet even there he was not quite safe, for at age 17, Lorenzo actually foiled a plot to assassinate the family. By that time, however, Lorenzo was already a seasoned diplomat, having conducted diplomatic missions to the Vatican and Milan. Groomed for command and tutored in classics and humanist philosophies, he, like his father and grandfather, became a patron of arts and literature. Like the carnivals, these were not merely artistic projects, though. Artistic and religious philanthropy was a display of power, a way of raising Florentine prestige, and a method to cleanse his soul after charging interest on loans, a sin in the Catholic Church. So when Lorenzo succeeded his father at age 20, the Medici appeared in fine hands. He was young, able, and healthy, likely to live a long time. Plus, his wise mother was still around to advise him. He was the model of an ideal Renaissance prince. Or really, half of one. Because sadly, he didn't look the part. See, Lorenzo was homely. One writer joked that in appearance, nature had, quote, been a stepmother to him. He was also short-sighted, squinted, and had a squashed nose that made his voice harsh and nasal. When he was a teenager, his father had needed to fix jousts for Lorenzo to win, a fact so obvious it became a joke. Thankfully, however, his brother Giuliano possessed the natural beauty, charisma, and athletic gifts that Lorenzo lacked. He won jousts fairly, or at least made it look convincing. So together, they were two halves of the perfect Renaissance prince. But Medici account books were not so perfect. 2 generations of spending had depleted Medici holdings. At the same time, branch managers were starting to skim off the top, and some of the Medici borrowers were starting to default. Lorenzo, for all his intelligence, was not a gifted banker. Other Florentine families then smelled blood in the water and began looking for an opportunity to finally unseat the Medici. And their chance came when Lorenzo clashed with Pope Sixtus IV. Sixtus was an aggressive pope, one set on elevating his family, the Della Rovere and Riario clans. Within a few years of his election in 1471, he'd made 6 of his nephews, some or all of whom were his illegitimate sons, into cardinals. But his beef with Lorenzo started over the city of Imola. See, Imola was a lucrative trade city on the route from Florence to Venice, and Lorenzo wanted it in order to expand the Medici Empire. But after Lorenzo offered the Duke of Sforza the massive sum to purchase it, Sforza turned around and sold it to Pope Sixtus at a bargain basement price. See, as a sweetener, those two agreed that Sixtus's nephew, Girolamo Riario, would marry Sforza's daughter once he began ruling Imola. Sixtus's objective: to expand the Papal States while constraining the influence of the Republic and its Medici rulers. Given this skullduggery, Lorenzo then refused to lend Sixtus the money to finance the purchase. Yeah, not really surprising there. And Sixtus responded by pulling his accounts from the Medici Bank and looking for other capital. He then turned to the Pazzi, the second most prominent banking family in Florence. A much older bloodline, for generations the Pazzi had languished in the Medici's shadow. Though they'd previously been among the ruling families of the Republic, their influence had fallen as the Medicis rose. In fact, tensions between the two clans had gotten so bad that in 1459, Lorenzo's sister had married a Pazzi to cool things down. And as far as the Medici knew, the Pazzi were now friends, allies, and family. Yet Lorenzo unintentionally restarted the feud when he pushed through an inheritance reform law which negatively impacted the Pazzi. And the Pazzi then decided that perhaps it was time to stage a comeback. After all, Lorenzo had gotten into a rift with the Pope and was forming a diplomatic league against the Papal States. Meanwhile, Pope Sixtus was increasingly lining up behind Florence's second family. When Lorenzo had conducted diplomacy trying to get the Pope to name his cousin, the Archbishop of Florence, Sixtus instead gave it to a Pazzi relative, Francesco Salviati. So yeah, maybe it was finally time to move on the brothers Medici. The idea started with Sixtus's nephew we mentioned earlier, Girolamo Riario, now the ruler of Imola. Though outwardly friendly to Lorenzo, he actually detested the man and wanted to expand his domain into the Medici-held town of Florence. So, he approached Archbishop Salviati, whose appointment Lorenzo had opposed, and Francesco Pazzi about a scheme. The plan was this. First, Francesco and the Pazzi family would stage a double murder of Lorenzo and Giuliano. Archbishop Salviati would then simultaneously capture the Republic's government and rally the citizens of Florence against Medici tyranny. Then Riario would march a contingent from Imola to secure the city. But when they approached the head of the Pazzi family with the idea and tried to recruit a famous mercenary captain, both said the plot was lunacy. No one would accept the murder of the Medici, unless, of course, the plotters secured papal support, but come on. So the plotters scheduled a private meeting with Pope Sixtus. "A change in government would be most agreeable," said Sixtus, "but it is not to involve bloodshed." Riario pressed his uncle. The villain Lorenzo had treated them shamefully. Okay, what if they did everything possible to avoid bloodshed, but, some violence occurred? Would Sixtus pardon the offender? Sixtus spoke carefully next, saying he desired the death of no man, but then repeated, "I urgently desire the government of Florence be removed from Lorenzo, for he is a treacherous scoundrel who constantly defies us. As soon as he is removed, we may deal as we please with the Republic, which will be highly agreeable to us." The code language was clear. Uncle Pope Sixtus was on board. And with that blessing, they began to form their hit squads and chose a time and place for the murder. Yet all would not go to plan. For while blood would soon spill on the streets of Florence, as we will see next time, Or right now, if you are watching on Nebula, not all of the blood would belong to the brothers Medici. Wait, you didn't know every Extra History episode goes up a week early before anywhere else on our creator-owned and operated streaming service? Well, they do. You can actually go watch the next part of this series right now, and please go do so. I am super proud of it. And then once you're done learning about the chaos in the cathedral, you can go on to watch early videos and extra content from Nebula's other 200 plus creators, all ad-free. Many of whom, like myself, are also innovating through prestige original projects that you can't see anywhere else. For instance, Tom Nicholas's feature-length documentary Boomers just dropped. I got to go to the New York premiere and it was just awesome. Or War Room, the real-life lore monthly series that keeps me up to date on active global conflicts, or every episode of my awesome travel game show of Lying Liars Who Lied to Me, The Getaway, or the creators of that show's other show Jet Lag, which has a new season where the boys are back in Japan playing hide and seek, and I cannot wait to see how that one turns out. And you can see all of that, plus just tons more exclusive stuff right now for just $3 a month when you sign up for an annual plan at nebula.tv/extrahistory. And if you wanted to give the gift of Nebula this holiday season, annual gift cards are available right now so you can share your favorite shows with the ones you love. Plus, Nebula has lifetime memberships to help you get around the ever-increasing amount of subscription services. You pay once and then enjoy Nebula for as long as you and Nebula both exist. Though again, please be sure to scan the code here or click the one below so you get the discount and you'll be supporting our channel, which we appreciate very much. Thank you for that. So please come see the difference that Nebula makes by clicking right here, or stay on the YouTube machine and check out our next video here, though I'm pretty sure that one's gonna have ads. Thanks so much to Angelo Valenciana, Arcalite Games, Dominic Valenciana, Foxdog, Hunter Z, Joseph Blame, Kuyakoi, and Ziliad Architectures for being awesome legendary patrons.